Good evening, beautiful people, witches, wizards, warlocks, mages, magi's, maguses. You know I referenced that because we're reading about magic. Condensed Chaos by Phil Hine. This is part 9. What a rhyme. That was terrible. Anyway, let's do this. This is Models and Metaphors. Let's read. Despite the seeming complexity of occult theories, the hierarchies of inner planes, chakras, energy lines, archetypes, souls, Akashic records, karmic debt recovery agencies, and so forth, they tend to share common tendency of rendering descriptions of the phenomenal world, where we spend most of our time, into very simple terms. Chaos magic tends to reverse this kind of modeling, and tends to generate very simple models for describing abstract experience, while recognizing the sometime need for using complex models for getting to grips with the phenomenal world. Peter Carroll, the foremost exponent of chaos, points out that it is characterized by a cavalier approach to metaphysics, based on the recognition that metaphysics are, after all, subject to belief. Many occult belief systems consist of a hodgepodge of metaphysical speculations which are accepted as truth, and which have additional bits bolted on as those who create them try and cram anything and everything into the same model. That sounds kinky. Scientists once believed they could arrive at a grand theory of everything and anything. Occultists are attempting the same thing, although it tends to manifest as attempts to merge divergent systems such as the tarot, runes, and I Ching together. Chaos magic, however, is characterized by a willingness to use different models and learn from them. Thus, chaos magicians use metaphors from chaos theory, ecology, biology, psychology, science fiction, computer programming, management theory, and anything else which might prove interesting or potentially useful. The chapter in this book dealing with chaos servitors is a result of my studying the principles of programming a computer using the COBOL language. I never actually became adept at COBOL programming, but it gave me a useful perspective with which to examine the magical techniques I was using at the time. Using this particular model led me to wonder if some properties of the model were possible to transfer into magical action, and by experimentation, I found they were, although not quite in the way I had expected. Encountering new models and metaphors can sometimes fire us with enthusiasm for new explorations and creative leaps into the darkness or the unknown. But models, magical or otherwise, can become subtle traps. It seems all too easy for us to embrace a new model or reality map, yet to suddenly find that we have bound ourselves within its limitations. But some models are particularly suited for specific tasks and situations. Rather than attempting to stretch one model so that it can account for everything and anything, the chaos approach encourages one to use the model which is most appropriate to the situation. Some years ago, I was approached by an acquaintance who requested that I create a protective talisman for her home. Now, there are many different approaches to this kind of magic. It would have perhaps been easiest for me to create a shield about her home, which could have been done without too much fuss or props. However, I wanted my acquaintance to feel that something definite had been set up. So we opted for a ritual of angelic invocation using all the pomp and formality of the Kabbalah, which left them in no doubt that mighty forces had been marshaled in order to protect the home from anything or anyone who might intrude with malign intent. If our basic models of reality are changed, then suddenly much of what we take for granted about the world can be called into question. It is a common tendency to behave as if our metaphors and maps are true. If we choose to live according to the statement nothing is true, then we are bound to acknowledge the fragility of a metaphor as being no more than it is. Chaos has shifted the emphasis from seeking that which is magical as that which lies beyond the known world, but recognizing that the world itself is magical. This is self and other. One of the most basic relationships is that of self and other, me and everything else, us and them. Even this relationship is informed by the dominant model of reality, which is based on 19th century notions such as the absolute separation of mind from matter, the mechanical nature of the physical world, and the distinction between subjectivity and objectivity. In this model, which is our consensual description of experienced reality, The mind makes sense of random chance events which happen in the exterior, objective world. This is not so much an accurate description of the world, but a description that, on the grand scale, confirms and supports much of our self-conceits about humanity's relationship with the rest of the planet. Models tend to make the world a simpler place, shape experience to conform to our expectations, and also do a neat job of justifying our superior position to everything else. A good example of such reductionist modeling is the creation of stereotypes. We all use stereotypes to varying degrees. They can be positive, acting as role models or ideal types, or negative stereotypes, which are responses to anxiety, loss of control. A simpler example, yet, is the tendency to describe our own behavior as a response to a given situation while attributing the behavior of others to their personality. A specific example within the magical context is that while you might well invoke deities, interpreting them as archetypes or sub-personalities, how far do you accept that those deities might have an existence, purpose, and intentions that are separate and beyond your own? Alright, we are going to stop it there with part 9, and we will see you all tomorrow. Have a good night.